everyone, and welcome to our last notes for the oceans unit about ocean life. Let's go ahead and get started. SWABOT students will be able to describe the different types of ocean life and also illustrate an ocean food web. We're going to kind of do the illustration later, but that's our goals for these notes. All right, we're going to talk about different types of animals. And the first type of ocean animals is called benthos. And benthos are organisms that live on, under, or attached to the bottom of the ocean. So you can see in this picture here, we've got some examples. We've got kelp or seaweed, oysters, snails, clams, sea stars, corals, anemones, and sponges. So I'm sure there are more types. These are just a few examples, but these are things that are alive, but they live or are attached to the bottom of the ocean. The second category is called nekton. And nekton are free-swimming animals that can move independently of currents. So we're going to talk about another section of animals that cannot move independently of currents, but most of nekton is mostly any animal that you can think of. When I would say name an ocean animal, you're going to give me probably a nekton. So we've got some examples. Whales, I've got my whale shirt on, crabs, fish, lobsters, sharks, any kind of shark, sea turtles, dolphins, shrimp. So anything that can basically swim is going to be a nekton, which is an animal that can swim anywhere, not anywhere it wants to, but it can swim with and not be moved by a current. Okay, the last category is called plankton. And plankton are tiny drifting organisms, and they are two parts. So there is phytoplankton, which is plant-like, and zooplankton, which is animal-like. So let's look at phytoplankton. So phytoplankton comes from Greek terms, phyto meaning plant and plankton meaning to wander or drift. So they cannot swim independently of a current. They rely on the currents, the surface currents, to move them around. They also need sunlight and nutrients for photosynthesis. So they're just like plants on the land where they need sunlight and nutrients. They are the base of most food webs, which is just also like the land where we've got grass and plants are the base of most food webs on land. All right, I want you to pause this video in just a second to think about where do you think phytoplankton would grow best? I want you to think about how deep it grows. Like, is it on the surface? Is it below? How far below the surface? And also, where do you think the best nutrients would be? So plants on land need soil and sunlight and water. Well, these plants have water, but they need those nutrients like that they would get from a soil on land. So where would those nutrients be, and how would they get the sunlight? So pause the video and think about that for a second, and on the next slide shows a map. All right, so the oranger and redder you get is where phytoplankton grows the best. So where it's purple and blue is where there's less nutrients in the water for it to grow. So see if you can notice any patterns, and we're going to talk more about this in class. All right, individual phytoplankton are usually too small to be seen with the naked eye, meaning you can't see them without a microscope, but they can grow in big areas called a bloom. And these blooms can be seen from space, and you can see these big areas, like these lighter areas. These are phytoplankton, but in a big group, you can see them. All right, zooplankton comes from Greek words also, meaning zoo means animal, and plankton also means to wander or drift, which is the same. Some are too small to be seen, and some others, like jellyfish, can be seen with the naked eye. Jellyfish can't swim very well. They can squirt water out, but they really rely on currents to move them around. And they eat phytoplankton or other zooplankton. So they are kind of like insects, where insects eat other insects a lot of times. And so zooplankton can eat phytoplankton or plants or other zooplankton. So here I've got our first example of a food web. So we've got kind of some phytoplankton, some zooplankton, and then those get eaten by successfully larger fish. And then here's another example of a food web. In this one, we've got some benthos in here too. We've got like a sea cucumber and a sea star and a sea urchin and some seaweed. And we've got the phytoplankton and zooplankton. We've got different animals eating different things. So you can pause the video and look at these food webs, but you're going to be drawing a food web later. All right, the deep ocean has some harsh conditions. I want you to pause the video again, and I want you to write down some ways that you think that it would be difficult to live in the deep ocean. So pause the video here. And then here are some examples of different types of animals that live in the deep ocean. Like even this is really deep. And we've got really, really deep down here in this zone. We're not going to learn all these different types of zones. And here's just some pictures of some animals that live in the deep ocean. And we will discuss in class some of the conditions that you thought of that might make it difficult to live in the deep ocean. All right, some reflection questions. What are some conditions of deep ocean life that animals must be able to survive? Like, why would it be difficult to survive in the deep ocean? What are some examples of benthos and, for that matter, nectin? So can you think of some examples? And why are plankton so important to food webs in the ocean? Why is it so important that we have plants, phytoplankton, and animal, little tiny animal, zooplankton, for our food webs? All right, we've got our meme for today, and I hope that you also believe science rocks.